Welcome to That Entrepreneur Life, a podcast about entrepreneurship that takes you from idea to launch and beyond. Each week, your hosts, Andrew Lees and Clint McPherson, discuss different business topics aimed at adding value to any entrepreneur's journey.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of That Entrepreneur Life. I'm Andrew Lees, and I'm here with my co-host, Clint McPherson. What's up, man?
Not much, brother. I'm just excited to be here again as we record another episode of the podcast. And I'm excited for us to kick this thing off by welcoming our special guest, Kimber Hill, to the show. How are you doing?
Hello, Clint. Hello, Andrew. I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, Kimber, it's an honor to have you on our show today. But before we dive into your specific entrepreneurial journey and what you've got going on, it's important, for you to share, to just take a minute and for you to share with our listeners, a little bit about yourself and what your background is.
Yeah. So entrepreneur life aside, just about me, who I am the baby of 6 kids. I grew up on a farm in North Alabama. So I am from the South, did my undergraduate degree in Birmingham, Alabama, moved to New York after that, did some time in the big city, sort of getting my wings underneath me, really. I was really interested in film production and media production in my youth. And ultimately after that, headed over to Denver to pursue more of that production career. And on a visit home to Alabama, is when I met my husband. We actually dated in high school, but we reconnected, many years after high school. And we reunited. He joined the Navy. I'm an active duty military spouse. And that's absolutely what birthed my business and the reason why I'm on the show with you guys today to talk about that entrepreneur life.
That's awesome. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you both for your service, and yeah, great to have you on.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Like Andrew said, thank your husband for his continued service. Like I was telling you offline just a minute ago, I served in the military for, 9.5 years. And so being an infantry officer and coming out of that, I know it's a huge transition, and I don't know what your husband's exit plan is. If he's a lifer, he could be, which is cool in itself. But, I got injured in Afghanistan, so I had to cut my career a little bit short. So.
Yeah. I talk to so many veterans who have that same story, which is, I thought I was a lifer. I thought I was going to be in longer than I was and fully planned on being in for that full 20, but things happen that you don't expect to happen, injuries and their medical conditions. You may be planning on 20 years, but you're not guaranteed 20. But thank you for your 10 years. That's an extensive period of time. And right now my husband believes he's going to be in for 20. Again, you never know what's going to happen, but that whole journey is what shaped my business because, I was very focused on me, when you're single and you're able to have that time to just focus on you, you get to pursue whatever degree you want, pursue whatever job you want, move all over the country. And I know that things change once you get married, but if you choose to get married, but if you marry someone in the military, things really, really change for you. Your life is not about you anymore. And that whole freedom of being able to pursue whatever you want to pursue really disintegrates. That's the experience I had.
Yeah. I mean, with that said, my wife went through this similar situation, right? Basically when I chose, she had to put her career on hold. Until I got out, and then it resumed. Obviously, we were fortunate enough though for her to, her business at the time wasn't doing anything remote, but because she was who she was and how valuable she was to their situation at hand, she was fortunate enough to initially contract with them to fill that process out. And then once they said, "Oh, we can do this," right? Then it was like, okay, boom, you're a full-time employee. Obviously people in the office, with her being the only one or the first one to go down that rabbit hole, was like, they're a little bit jealous, right? Because they're like, well, she's working from home, but she was out of state, and following me around. It wasn't something she chose to like, hey, like this is what's going to happen. But it was good. Like it wasn't intentional. Like she didn't have a medical issue or anything like that. It was more like, hey, I'm following my husband, and just luckily she got that job, and it was her I think it saved her sanity, right? Because if you don't have something to keep you busy, you can go crazy following your husband around, or vice versa, your wife around while they're deployed. So,
yeah, there are a few things that make you who you are. And you can't accredit any one thing to giving you your complete identity, but your contribution to the world or your contribution to something that is meaningful to you, your work is definitely one of those things that comprises your identity. And as a military spouse, you're not in the military, right? So your spouse who is in the military has a pretty concrete identity of who they are and what their purpose is. So you're comparing yourself to that, right? But you're also moving all the time. So you've left your family behind, you've left your friends behind, you've probably lost your job, unless you're lucky enough to be like me or be like your wife, who you were able to maintain your position and work remotely. So all of these things that start to make a person who they are questioned and shaken and rocked. And you really do have to be an adaptable person and learn to accommodate all of those things. It's funny now, I talk to my civilian friends and they think, if I had to move, I would lose my mind. I can't imagine moving to the other side of the country. Whereas for us, we're acclimated. And the concept for us is, oh, another move. Okay, great. Let me get out my process and start running through that. And
checklist.
Right. It makes you a stronger person. It really does. But my beef with it is, why do you have to leave your job? Why can you not have a career and move? Which is why we created VirtForce. And that when I became a military spouse, for the whole first year that I was a spouse, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome. So I felt like I was sitting on this big secret, but I was a little too nervous to bring it to the military spouse community because I was such a new spouse, new in the ranks of being a spouse. So I sat on it for the whole first year. And then eventually I just said, I can't sit on this anymore. And my secret was remote work, was keeping your job as you move, and educating military spouses about remote work, and then partnering with employers to bring military spouses remote work. And as I embarked into that, just because I wanted to help this community, this huge business grew out of it. And the beef that I had from the beginning, which is, why do I have to give up my career to support you, is the reason that we did that. And it's turning out to help a lot of people. And the answer to that is, you don't have to give up your career.
Right. And this whole remote work thing is relatively new. I mean, which is kind of amazing. We've had the technology to work remotely in a lot of jobs for many years, right? But really, until when you started VirtForce, a couple of years ago, it was still, there were people starting to work remotely, but it wasn't like this massive shift. But really, with what's happened with COVID and quarantine and everything, I think a lot of companies are starting to, especially bigger ones who aren't quite as agile, and they're a little more resistant to change. They're probably looking at it like, oh, wow, we got the same amount of work accomplished while our employees were at home, maybe even more, because now you're cutting out commute times. Maybe people are happier and they're more productive, which I think I would advocate that that's absolutely the case. And so now people are getting more work done, and they can cut down their overhead, and people can be more flexible. So, I mean, it's an interesting time, but it was a perfect time for you, I think, to start VirtForce and get that off the ground, because, it's going to get some real traction quickly.
Absolutely. The timing was divine. And speaking on what you're bringing up is a misconception that we hear often in the remote workspace, which is, I don't want to work remote because I don't want to do customer service work or do phone sales work. We hear that from candidates a lot. And it's just so amazing to me that conception is still out there. And we get asked a lot by people who are just curious about how we're doing and what we're doing. We place so many different job types. I mean, almost anything you can do from the office can be done at home. Yeah, we know all of the IT work can be done from home. We know, systems engineering and coding and development, all of the hard techie stuff. That's one of those things that you've been able to do from home for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know customer service work can be done from home. We know sales work can be done from home. But who knew that your accountant doesn't have to be in the same building with you, or that your bookkeeper doesn't need to be there, or that your administrative person doesn't have to be in your room? Who knew that your lawyer doesn't need to be on staff in the same building with you, but can be on staff working from home? So we've placed nurses, we've placed lawyers, we've placed CPAs and bookkeepers, and of course, admin assistants and customer service reps too. But the reality of the matter is anything you can do from an office can be done from home.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big believer in that as well. I mean,
yeah,
my mind, it was a huge shift in my mindset too. But and I wouldn't say it hasn't been done right. I want to say that it's more popular now than ever before, right? Because people have been working virtually for a while, but just the popularity of it and just being able to have that aha moment and saying, yeah, like all these jobs, all these positions,
like of course that can happen. Yeah,
exactly. Without a shadow of a doubt can happen, and we can implement it. And I think it just, even in my business, I wanted to have people that were working on the job site with me, in an office, because just in the military, that's how we do it too, right? We're all together, we're all working as a team, and I got all that motivation. But I was like, you know what, this VA thing, virtual assistant thing that I looked into or heard about while I was at PodFest, I know about it. I was like, let me tap into this. And I have 2 people that I'm working with now that are my virtual assistants, and it frees me up to do so much more. And it's just crazy that I can say, hey, this is what I want done. Go do it. I'm not a micromanager, but I want this done. At the end of the day, I'll follow up with you, see where we're at, keep me updated. And it's been from the podcast to just what I do every day, digital marketing wise, to, just helping other clients and just teaching and educating people. And they're such a lifesaver.
Yes. And that's what we do at VirtForce for all of you entrepreneurs who are listening to the Entrepreneur Life podcast. That Entrepreneur Life podcast, we meet with you and we scope your position. We evaluate all of your needs. We even gauge your personality and what kind of people you work better with. And then we go straight back to our military spouse talent community. We have over 21,000 active duty spouses looking for remote work in that community. And we recruit from those 21,000 spouses. Now, these are the people who absolutely need and are looking for remote work because of their mobile lifestyle and because of how transient they are. We work with spouses who are OCONUS, in Germany, Japan, all over the world, and in every U.S.-based time zone, including Alaska and Hawaii.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I mean, as entrepreneurs, we're very used to to working virtually. I mean, and we're used to kind of trying to build teams very efficiently and, scaling up in a way that you can scale up and scale back if you need to without having to let a lot of people go or, build a big physical office. But it's cool that what you're doing is bringing people work or helping connect people with work flexibly who don't necessarily want to go down, the entrepreneurial route. They don't necessarily want to start their own business, but they're able to work at home just like a lot of entrepreneurs do. So, I think that's really cool. And it gives them, that flexibility, which once you taste that flexibility, it's really hard to go back.
It's hard to go back. Why would you ever go back to an office once you've had that freedom?
Yep.
Yeah, we've helped over 500 military spouses find remote work, but it's not always about a 9 to 5. So a lot of times it's gig-based work that we're helping with, or we're helping those military spouses connect to. I just married the word connect and freelance, and I made a new word.
Calance.
Okay, trademark.
Sufficient.
I call it.
Hashtag.
Just kidding. Yeah, we help them connect to freelance opportunities too. So what we have found is this is just interesting, just a fun tidbit that I'll share with you. We found that some of our community members, or not some, everyone has a different idea of what remote work works for them. And it's on the spectrum, right? It goes all the way down here to what I call gig-based work. Above that is freelance work. In front of that is your project-based work and commission-based work. Then we start getting into the hourly work, hourly pay, and then we work into salaries. So there's this whole spectrum of what kind of employment they're looking for. And what a lot of entrepreneurs and employers need to be educated about is no matter what you have on your plate, there is somebody within our talent community who is perfectly suited to do it with the pay and compensation structure that works for you. And I love seeing the candidates come in and find things all across that spectrum that work for them.
Yeah, it probably lights them up, I mean,
Yeah.
for sure. It gives them that flexibility to choose what they want. But Kimber, with all that said, I mean, let's hit the rewind button a little bit and just go back a little bit in the time machine. And I know VirtForce is new, right? 2018 was when you co-founded it.
Yes.
So can you just take us back to where your entrepreneurial journey started, and was that it? And then what is it that you're passionate about in the entrepreneurship space?
I have been fighting. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I've always wanted to work for an organization that would allow me to climb high and take an executive leadership role. So every time I've accidentally found myself starting a side business or running a business, I try to pull back really hard and regroup and refocus. So I've been fighting with that part of who I am for a long time. And I've never wanted to call myself an entrepreneur until the last couple of years. And I would say that I've always been a business builder and a business maker, whatever organizations that I work for. I'm very into BD for those organizations and helping them grow new departments. I would say that this entrepreneurial journey began probably in 2012. When I moved to New York in 2012, and I participated in a program there that taught me workforce development. So in the back of my mind for the past, 8 years has been this concept of workforce development really pouring into your community. And I took that with me to every job that I went to from there. And I've tried to get each organization that I've worked for to really consider this concept of creating growth programs for their talent and pouring into the talent. That concept of workplace development is absolutely something that I've been trying to get started at a few of the organizations that I've been with. But as you know, corporate programs, they run slow. They move slowly. They don't move at a fast pace. And any type of new concept, you've got to get all kinds of leadership buy-in and support behind it. And it can just be moving at the speed of ice, of a glacier, right? So anyway, I've had other entrepreneurial journeys. I've told you about the Amazon business before we got on this call, where I had come up with a product idea, sourced it from China, got it on Amazon, dumped in a ton of my personal resources to get that going. And it was nice to see a profit and to see those kinds of things working out. And I've always been a huge fan of multiple streams of revenue, right? Even if you have a W-2 job, having a freelance thing on the side is good. Having some kind of sales mechanism on the background is good. You should have multiple ways to support yourself. So I finally, though, when I became a part of the military spouse niche, I was finally able to deploy this workforce development concept that I had been preaching to my employers for years, but I could do it at my own speed, at my own pace, implement plans and ideas as I wanted to. And it was volunteer work. at first. Absolutely. It was not a business at first because I told you I didn't see myself as an entrepreneur. I tried to stay away from that. I positioned myself as a servant leader and an advocate to the community. Before I knew it, though, because I've always had that, business development mentality and attitude, before I knew it, we were opening revenue streams. And I think it was at the military influencer conference that I went to last September, where I looked at everything we had done over the past year and a half and said, you know what? I am finally going to embrace the fact that I am an entrepreneur, and I'm going to stop fighting with that. Going to stop fighting it and finally accept it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I struggled with it because I knew how much work it is. And I know what kind of a life you have laid out for yourself in front of you. Just constant perseverance. You believe in what you believe in, and you just can't stop. You just can't slow down. Something inside of you says this can work. This is going to work. And you look at every challenge as an opportunity. And that's a hard life, right?
Yeah,
without a doubt. It's not easy. But what you just said, though, I just want to, before you go any further, that just the servant leadership and building the community or working in the community and just wanting to help, that is like what takes you to another level. And it takes entrepreneurs. If you have that same heart, you can survive, because you're building that community. You're building that, you're showing that that you're adding that value, and you weren't seeking anything in return. And now that you see where you've taken your business, or you see how powerful what you were created is, or co-created, I mean, it's huge, right?
Yes. And I'll give you a little bit of insight into my personal struggle with identity and my personal struggle to finding servant leadership. I will tell you, I'm not going to go into extensive detail because it's a very long story, but I will tell you that the day that I stopped focusing on me and putting myself first, up until this point, everything in my life was about what's going to make Kimber's career better, what's going to make Kimber's salary better, higher, what's going to, improve the way I feel about myself, but not in a positive way. There was a very pivotal point in my life where everything transitioned and everything changed. And it was before my marriage to John. It was before the military happened. But as soon as I found the concept of servant leadership, which is, leading others by setting an example and by doing things that are going to help them, and I took the focus off of me and I could focus on the people around me and who can I help? How can I serve them? That's when I was able to step into the entrepreneurial space. That's when, my heart and my mind started to open up to what I can do in this world while I'm here. And everything has just been flowing so organically, like the universe has just totally opened and aligned and everything is falling into place. So I for all of you entrepreneurs out there, if you feel like you're constantly fighting a battle, step back and evaluate your core values and who you're doing this for. Because there may be a change that you need to make.
Right. And it's very easy for anybody to, you got to put yourself, you have to look out for yourself. You have to put food on the table and pay the bills and all that stuff. And that's so important. And it's very easy to get wrapped up in, okay, how do I want to make X amount of money and how do I get there? Instead of saying, I want to provide X amount of value and then the money will come. Because if I can prove out that, that so many people need help with something, they're looking for assistance or whatever, then somebody's going to pay for it, at some point. So I think that's a really powerful proof of concept to go into it with really no expectation, or at least like, it's good to go into, if you're really starting a business or you're starting something to start a business, it's good to go into it with some expectation of like, hey, I'm going to figure out how to monetize this at some point. But if you can go in with modest expectations of how you're going to, of making money, and you can just help people, then, that's really powerful, because it's a I feel like it's a much quicker way to prove out the concept, because you're not asking for people for, you're not asking people for things all the time, because then it just gets really intrusive and people feel kind of like, violated. They're like, whoa, wait a second. I'm just trying to learn, a little bit here. And if you can just teach them and they don't feel like, they owe you anything, then and they want that information, then that's a really organic way to get a good proof of concept for a business.
Absolutely. And I will share one of our successes was building the community and saying, hey, I'm a part of this community, so I know what your pain points are. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about them and start solving them together. And 6 to 9 months of doing that before we ever saw a dime, right? 6 to 9 months of just putting in the work. And of course, throughout the way, I start thinking to myself, all right, well, I think we can monetize this program, or I think we can monetize that program, and establish things that are more sustainable. Of course, there's always backlash. If you look at the community that we serve, a lot of programs are free for this particular community, and a lot of the work is expected to be nonprofit work. But I think you have to come to the point in your business, depending on what your business model is, where you say, I know that I'm providing value. I'm not going to apologize for making it sustainable, and I'm going to feel very confident and comfortable in this space because I'm needed here.
Right. For sure.
And enjoy it. Yeah. Enjoy the process and be confident in what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah, that helps. People definitely can tell when you're confident, when you're trying to have a conversation with people, when you're not like the know-it-all, you want to learn from them as well. So, right. Well, what was how did you know when to, I think a lot of people would want to know, how did you know when it was time to kind of turn on your revenue stream and start to charge for some of your services? And how do you transition people from giving them free information or free service to actually having them pay for it?
Well, let me say that we currently don't offer any programs that we charge our community for. We did last year. We loved it, decided to close it and revamp it, and we're launching it again this summer. So most of our revenue is actually earned from our employment partners who seek to recruit and hire from our demographic and our talent community. Mm-hmm. And how did I know it was time? My secret weapon is the question, how can we help you? Mm-hmm. We started getting a lot of recognition in the employment partner and the employer in that general direction. They started paying attention to VirtForce because they were getting hires from VirtForce.
Right.
I'll tell you how that happened in a minute, but we would always reply to those people by saying, okay, we're glad you're interested in VirtForce. We're so glad that you hired someone. How can we further help you? And if there was a response to that question, then we knew a revenue opportunity was there. Mm-hmm. When we started to see multiple employers come to us for the same service over and over again, maybe similar but different, this recruiting, like we need you to recruit for us. Of course, it's going to be a little different for everyone. But when we started to see the same problem in our space over and over again, that's when we knew we had a consistent revenue stream available. And how did that happen? It happened because we built a community and because we started building a weekly job file for that community where we would go to every job board on the internet and pull in all of the remote jobs that we could find for them. Literally what happened, which is amazing, is so many people were getting hired from our group and referencing VirtForce as their referral source that the employers would then come and contact us to try to figure out, hey, what the heck is a VirtForce? Yeah. And that's when we were able to say, okay, how can we help you? Is there anything else that we can do for you? So that's my secret weapon. And for the candidate community that we service, from day one, we've tried to make everything free, which is why we built our podcast to bring all of our education that's the one platform where we can do all of that for free and still, earn ad revenue from it. Okay. So when we're seeing the same thing now, the candidates are coming to us for the same questions over and over and over and over. And I've been so resistant for so long to offer, a paid service to our candidates, but I now realize that we're doing them a disservice by not offering them the services that they're asking for. So it's very similar. We're leaning back on that question of how can we help you? Like, what do you need? You have to listen. You've got to listen to your community and be in tune and connected to them. They're going to tell you what they need. Unless you're a nonprofit and you can get a ton of money from grant funding to pay for that, you have to charge for it. So, yeah.
I mean, I love that whole strategy behind that and how it came about. I mean, that is pretty powerful, and I love it. So, Kimber, how do you? So we're talking about let's switch over to talking about finding the right team members.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you find the right team? Because I know you have a pool of talent with all these individuals. So who can work how do you get the right team members that you know that can work virtually for any business, and how does VirtForce help with that?
First, I want to say there's a great book called From Good to Great. And the concept in that book that's taught is there's a bus and everyone has a seat on the bus and everyone needs to be in the right seat to get to where you're going, right? If you are operating the bus, you need to be in the front or you need to be driving, right? So what I like about that book is it's also very frank in stating that a bad hire can totally derail your operation. You know, if you've got someone really rowdy in the back of the bus who is screaming, throwing papers at everybody and stabbing people with pencils, nobody's going to be happy on their way to your journey or your destination. So entrepreneurs, business owners, getting the right person on your team is very important. And if you need to know more about that concept, definitely check out the book From Good to Great. A good hire is worth their weight in gold. A bad hire can tank your effort and tank your organization and just spread toxicity throughout your work environment.
Right. It's contagious.
It's contagious. We know that it's important. We know that we need people who see your vision and who can drive in the direction of that vision. So the military spouse community, the active duty military community, we attract candidates who are not the star of the show. They understand what it means to be a part of something bigger than themselves. They understand what it means to be a team member. And by nature, because of their military lifestyle, they understand adaptability and flexibility because they're living it. Another big thing that just a fun fact that we found out about our military spouses is they are particularly great with secure operations. So operational security has taught us that military spouses are great in working in environments where data needs to be secure. They understand that concept better. And that's one of the fun things we've heard back from a few of the more high profile organizations that we work with. So it's just a unique demographic, right? Another thing about this demographic is that most of the military spouses in our community have twice the educational attainment than your average civilian, and they're 3 times more likely to be unemployed. So it's a very ripe harvest that you can dig into. So how do we find the right person for you? We meet with you and scope your needs. So every position is different, and we have a couple of ways you can interact with our talent community, but my favorite is to do direct source recruiting for you. So we map your personality profile that you're going to work best with, and we map the job scope. So what that means is all of the details and the requirements that you need to be completed, we're going to take and collect all of those requirements, formulate them into a job description. 2 big takeaways I'd like for you to receive from this point is a lot of times business owners come to us and tell us they think they need a fill in the blank. But after we meet them and scope out their position, we're able to consult and say, listen, you said you needed a graphic designer. What you actually need is a social media manager based on everything you told me.
Yeah,
you think you need this, but this is after you've, described everything. I'm going to, drop a truth bomb on you. This is what you actually need.
Yeah. And that's good for you to be able to step in and do that, because they could end up hiring a graphic designer and then also having to hire a social media manager. And then before you know it, they've got like 3 or 4 people who could really just be, you could have 1 or 2 people doing those jobs, so you could actually help companies be more efficient by identifying what they really need.
Absolutely. I mean, you waste your time and you waste your resources if you're not moving in the right direction. And at VirtForce, we're uniquely qualified to give you this consulting experience, because I've spent the past 5 years in the staff augmentation environment for government contracting organizations and now for my own business. And we have a team of highly qualified HR professionals who can advise in these matters. And running a virtual team too, we're looking for people who can work remotely. Our demographic, the talent that we attract, is automatically conditioned to work in a virtual environment because of the skills that they're picking up from the lifestyle and culture that they lead. But we're also developing them. We're also providing them, workforce development and helping educate them on what does it mean to work remotely. So then we go and look in our candidate community for the best person for your job. You can either hire them directly through us or work with us on a contracting basis if you're not looking for a full-time employee and you just want to use someone temporarily or part-time. So yes, I hope that answers your question. It's an in-depth process. And I will say that we have quicker approaches too. So if you'd like to post a listing on our job board, you're welcome to do that. We usually get about 2,000 clicks on day 1 for those job board listings. So it can be overwhelming for your inbox, which is why we recommend recruiting through us. But if you're looking to do the recruiting yourself, you can participate in that too.
That's wild. Well, I mean, it's better to be overwhelmed than just hear crickets. So, it's good that your platform is that powerful and that, that sought after, that, that people are getting that much attention. It's really, and probably very good vetted, leads too, right? Where, there's other job posting platforms where you might get, your inbox inundated with companies, but are they really even close to, or, on the other side, if you're a company looking for candidates, you might get a couple hundred people reach out to you, but 190 of them are just not even remotely relevant to what you're trying to hire for. So
absolutely. Yeah.
That's really important.
That's one of the things that, you face if you're doing the recruiting yourself. And one of the items that we're able to weed out for you if we're doing that for you. And some people really enjoy that. I was talking to a hiring manager last week and he just said, I love it. I love when I get those 200 applicants. And he's one of those guys, he's twice retired and just is too bored to actually stay retired. Right. So he said he's reading every one of them and giving feedback on all of them, which we love. And we take care of our candidate community. If you don't get a job, you apply through us, we provide you feedback on why you weren't selected. Because we care about their growth and we care about them succeeding the next time they get that opportunity.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. And that personability, or is that a word? That, being able to,
it is now.
Right. Yeah. We're inventing all kinds of words on the show today, but, building that relationship with your candidates is awesome because you're very focused on your goal and getting them, employed. I mean, it's great. It's a lot of work just running that business. And then you also do you have a full-time job as well? Do you do other work? Is that?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question.
Yeah. How do you balance all that?
Oh, this is a wonderful question because very exciting things are happening on that front. I will tell you that the person who allowed me to work remotely was Donna Coleman, the CEO or the owner of Atos Systems. And she has been an inspiration to me and could have very easily just let me go when my husband became active duty. And her commitment to saying, Kimber, you do great things for this organization and we want to keep you on and let you stay remote and continue to grow and promote me while being a remote team member, absolutely shaped what VirtForce is now and why we're here. So we had a really interesting conversation in mid last year when I talked to her about what I really wanted out of my role with that organization with Atos. And I was able to be really open and transparent with her about what we're doing at what we're doing at VirtForce. And she's been incredibly supportive of, where we're headed with this company. And she knows that previously where my plans and intentions had been to grow into an executive CIO with their organization, that my plans and intentions have changed, but I'm still receiving all of that invaluable support and mentorship from their organization as we grow VirtForce. So we have a really unique relationship and a really beautiful relationship. And they've actually hired some military spouses from VirtForce, which has been awesome.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah. So, but balancing that for the first couple of years was hard. I'm not going to lie or sugarcoat that. And if you're an entrepreneur and you have a day job and a side hustle that you want to be your full-time hustle, you've been there, you've felt it. I don't know about either of you, but
Oh,
yep,
no,
absolutely.
without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, just to go hand in hand with that though, through your entrepreneurial journey, which is still in its infancy or however you say that word, like right off the bat, it's really young.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't, you're having success early on and you're doing great. Right. But through this journey so far, and again, your journey it isn't nowhere to be, it's definitely not heading towards the end by no means, but from your highs to lows so far, right? Things that you mentioned imposter syndrome earlier, right? Mm-hmm. What has been the most difficult thing about being an entrepreneur and how have you worked to overcome that?
Not the biggest. Imposter syndrome was difficult in the beginning. And my biggest negative self-talk that I'm hearing from myself right now is that I don't pay my employees well enough. Because what in my ideal circumstance would be, I would love to have every single one of my employees on salary with benefits. As a business that's bootstrapping, that's not something that we can do right now. We are confined to hourly at this point in time. So that's my biggest, my lowest point from the last 2 years, which is the people who are giving to this organization, giving of their time and believing in it and following the mission. I wish that we had the working capital to structure that way. And we're going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
it just takes time.
It just takes time, especially if we're not taking angel investors or loans or going, we're bootstrapping. We don't have any debt as a company. So I have to counteract that negative self-talk by saying, look, what is VirtForce? I completely own it. I own every piece of it. Mm-hmm. I still haven't taken a salary or a payment from VirtForce yet. So that's one of the things that I'm committed to not doing until we're able to get to a more sustainable position as a company. And so that's the hardest, guys. I mean, putting the raw truth out there, that's absolutely the hardest. But my employees all report to be incredibly happy. So I don't think that I'm in danger of them abandoning the vision and leaving us, and they understand where we are. And I would say that my biggest virtue and point of success in mitigating that is finding employees who have a heart for the startup industry or who have worked for nonprofits before, and they don't work to increase their salary or increase a paycheck or just to have money coming in. They work because they believe in the vision and they're here to make it come into fruition.
That's
right?
important.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
important
for sure.
And I'm sure they believe in you too as a leader. That's really important because they might believe in the vision of the business and be really excited about it, but then start working with you and and just realize that, oh man, I can't work for this person. They don't have a good they themselves don't have a good vision, and they're difficult to work with. So I think that leadership is so important, which, I'm sure it sounds like you really have that. And, so if you're able to follow the lead of somebody who's, first of all, I mean, you're almost in a way like a client of the company, because you're able to, like you said, you're able to do your full-time job remotely. And so that was part of the inspiration to be able to, start your business. So they see that it's working for you. It's something that you're very passionate about, and you're able to lead them. And you're interested in growing the business, right? Like if you were kind of thinking, okay, we're just going to stay where we are now. It's okay. It works, and we'll just ride this as long as we can, and everybody do the same amount of work and we'll be fine. Then that's difficult to get behind too. But if you see, hey, this is on an upward trajectory, and, we're all going to do well when we get to where we want to be, and when you're able to grow that business into something that, like you said, that's more sustainable, and that, that's more of a, that has more, it's got a lot of potential, right? So that potential is what people are following, as well as your leadership.
You're right. And, we talked about there being a spectrum of what kind of work works for what kind of people. And the tricky part for our organization, and I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, is attracting people who want to grow with you, who are not expecting, a $60,000 salary right off the bat or a $100,000 salary immediately, but who know that there's potential for them to get to that point, and they're willing to stick around for a while.
Trusting the process, right?
Trusting the process, yeah.
And showing, and I got from what you said and when you said it, right? It just, you can tell you care. And so I think when you show that you care, that you get surrounded by people that, they're there to add value because they see what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. They see your vision as well. And selling people on that is not always easy, right? Because there's a lot of people like, what's in it for me? What's in it for me, right?
Absolutely.
But then you come around and you show that, hey, I want everybody to get paid this or that, and that's my vision. And when they see that you really care about them and you're really sticking behind that and you're trying to get to that point, it's not like you're not trying, right? I really think that goes such a long way. I mean, I have people that are working for me with that same, like, I'm like, guys, I'm doing good, but I wish I can pay you like I need to pay you. And like you pay that you deserve, because I see that, and I'm like, we're going to get there. You just trust the process and jump in the boat with me, and just grab that paddle and just keep paddling, and we're going to get there, right? We'll cross that finish line eventually.
And when you're close, you're so close, you can taste it. And ultimately what it comes down to is just building your business relationships and continuing to beef up your revenue streams and open those to a point. And a skill that I've learned is forecasting and knowing we have to earn this much revenue in order for us to get to our goals, and looking at that on a month to month basis and saying, did we hit our revenue goal this month? Mm-hmm. What's going to have to change for us to hit that. And that goes back to just being unapologetic in your space, to just setting yourself apart as an expert and embracing it and letting people know the service is available to you. We can really change the way that your business is structured, and letting your team be your advocates too. It's a process, and it's the hardest part. It's a little bit related to just building the business, and also a lot of bit related to, there are people on my team now and I care about them, and I want to see them succeed just as much as I want to see this business succeed. So that's a lot of pressure. It keeps me up at night.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's a lot of pressure, but when it works, it's great, and you can give other people jobs, and I mean, that's such a cool feeling. I think that's a really great part of being an entrepreneur, is being able to provide opportunities for other people, as well as yourself. So, Well, Kimber, as we wrap up this episode, what is one piece of advice that you could give our listeners to add value to their entrepreneurial journey?
Embrace the uncomfortable places and embrace the things that do make you uncomfortable, because as we have this conversation about what's been the hardest thing for me, and that's, me wanting to be further ahead in our journey than what we are. And what I'll say is I've had to put myself in uncomfortable positions. I've had to hire team members who I know are a part of our bigger picture and a part of our bigger journey, and make those job offers to them and ask them to have some faith in our organization and where we're going. And it's uncomfortable. But when you take the time to invest in the right team member, you end up making serious progress. If you can get the right person on your team, serious progress is headed your way. The whole reason that this podcast is happening right now is because you guys saw an article about VirtForce in the Huffington Post. And the whole reason that article happened is because I took a chance and hired someone. And that person took a chance on us. And I stepped out and into a space that was a little uncomfortable for me, and committed to hiring a team member to do that. So P.S. Thanks, Kirsten, for your help in that area.
Gotta give her a shout out.
Yeah, shout out to Kirsten.
Definitely.
So yeah, and speaking to hiring in general, no matter what your budget is, remember there's a spectrum. Remember you can afford it. We can find you the right person and the right talent. It is possible, and be bold and go there.
Yeah. You got to kind of take a chance and really just go for it, and find the right people, find the right platforms like VirtForce to work, to partner with. So I think that's great.
Boldly go where you were afraid to go, because that is where the growth is.
Love it.
Absolutely. I definitely believe it.
Well, guys, that's a wrap for episode 18 from the both of us, Kimber. We want to thank you for taking the time out of your day in helping us add value to what we're doing on our podcast.
Thank you so much.
Guys, thank you so much for listening to That Entrepreneur Life. To learn more about what Kimber and her team are working on, check out vertforce.us. That's VirtForce.us. Or listen to the VirtForce podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. If you like what you heard today, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or any other major podcast directory. You can also find us on all the socials and on our website at thatentrepreneurlife.com.
And with that said, we also want to quickly give a special shout out to our family and friends, to include all of our listeners, followers, and subscribers. If you find value in what we're doing on the show, please consider making a small donation. Even just a few dollars helps us keep things moving along to help bring value to your entrepreneurial journey. And thanks, guys, for continuing to support what we do as entrepreneurs. And don't forget to join us next week for another episode of That Entrepreneur Life.
Thanks for listening to That Entrepreneur Life podcast. Be sure to visit thatentrepreneurlife.com to join the conversation, access our show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode as we continue to add value. Until next time.